Welcome to the High Sky Pod. I am so excited to welcome my dear friend and colleague, Mike Hirschberg.
Okay, let's go.
Mike, how are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good. How about you?
I'm doing amazing. So let's just jump right in. I think everybody that knows you knows that I would call you the godfather of vertical flight. So I just want to jump in and talk about how much you've done because you've led, founded, or been involved in almost every major vertical flight and eVTOL initiative in the past decade. So when you think back to that first transformative vertical flight workshop back in 2014. What vision did you have in mind, and how close are we to realizing it?
It's Danielle, and it's a bit of hyperbole, but thank you for those compliments. Yeah, so in kind of August of 2023, I was at a meeting, talked to Mark Moore, and he was explaining who was then with NASA, and he was then explaining the AIAA had a transformative flight working group, focus group. So I met some of those folks, who some of them I'd already known. And I guess the light bulb came on. There was this confluence of technologies of, electric motors and batteries and new ways of designing aircraft and advancements in, computational fluid dynamics and all kinds of modeling. In the past, the big companies like Boeing and Lockheed would have these mainframe computers with these big programs in order to do calculations for how aircraft presumably would fly. But then with the huge digital revolution in the 2000s, now these really power intensive, computational intensive programs, like kind of anybody could use them. So there's a huge democratization of design capabilities for aircraft. So you saw batteries improving, computers improving, technology improving, and the FAA was really signaling its willingness to consider new concepts. They were updating Part 23, which is the small airplane type certification, and they came out with Amendment 64, which basically allowed more of these non-traditional concepts for electric flight. And that was really, all these different things were coming together, as well as lots of venture capital were starting to come into the market for some of these designs. So, there's always been this flying car kind of hope or dream of the masses. And so maybe some of that originally was sort of like that. Hey, if we could have something small where you could take your family and hop around vertically or just whatever, not vertically, that would really be cool. So that attracted some initial interest and movement. And so kind of in conversations, we decided, why don't we bring together everybody who's interested in these new technologies, these new transformative capabilities, and like have a meeting. And I went to my old company, and we got to use their conference room for free. It was a maximum attendance of 100 people, so it had to be kind of not quite invitation only, but somewhat for the presenters, of course, and then the first 100 total people.
Who
And
were
at
some
that
of the people
time,
that were who were some of the people that were at that first meeting?
yeah, so a lot of the people who are now, then and now, but still leaders in this space. So, Mark Moore, obviously, who was at NASA, went to Uber. He's now got his eCTOL or eSTOL company, Whisper Aero. Eric Allison, who was with Z Aero, then Uber, and now with Joby. We had Joe Ben Bevert from Joby was there. Um, uh, other people from, John Piasecki from Piasecki Aircraft, who's continued to be a out of the box thinker. So, I could go on. A lot of NASA people, some FAA folks, a lot of
Daryl
different
Cummings
companies.
also. He would be so mad at me if I didn't remember that he was there, which was wild. When you think back, what did you think was gonna come out of that meeting? Did you, is it like no surprise to you that we see Joby on the news and that they're flying? Or are you like, yeah, I knew that was gonna happen?
From the beginning, they appeared to be, the leaders. And so, you know, so that was 12 years ago. Um, so lots of things, lots of companies came and went in that time. Another company, Volocopter, who wasn't there, but they were actually flying their first two-seat demonstrator. NASA was doing tests, somewhat through Mark Moore to look at distributed electric propulsion. They had a 10-foot wingspan test bed drone called Greased Lightning, the GL-10. So that was, really eye-opening that they demonstrated that could work. So just really a lot of innovative technologies. So I'll say from that very beginning, I'm always focused on solutions and action. I don't want to have a bunch of people come together, talk, and then go their separate ways and not do something. So it didn't quite come out from that first workshop, but we had this group. We eventually, we had one in 2020, 2025. We at NASA Ames. Again, we had them every year since then. But we really wanted from that beginning to focus on, okay, what are the key challenges and how do we as a community focus on overcoming them? Things like regulations and batteries and infrastructure, all these hosts of ideas. So I think it helped spur NASA for some of the on-demand mobility studies that they did. So, NASA had been doing studies on, before it was called advanced air mobility, it had different names, urban air mobility. Before that, it was on-demand mobility. They had, I think it was thin haul, a couple other names, looking at these smaller, both conventional takeoff and landing and vertical takeoff and landing. But yeah, I mean, the whole purpose of this bringing this group together in 2024, I'm sorry, 2014 was to look at the challenges, look at the progress. We can see this can happen. There's this confluence of all these technologies and interest, and sort of lay out what we thought, how we could achieve this and bring it to fruition.
Oh, I love that. So let's talk about that the Vertical Flight Society, which was, were you at the Vertical Flight Society at this time?
Yeah, so I became the executive director of VFS. Then it was called the American Helicopter Society, or AHS International. I started in 2011 as the executive director, and I've been, as a consultant for many years, beginning in 1999. So I was being paid by VFS for 26 years.
I gotcha. So was it your idea to change the name from the American Helicopter Society to Vertical Flight Society? Because I would say that was um extremely insightful, and that not just helicopters would be doing vertical takeoff and landing. So, how did you sort of know that that was where the industry was going?
Well, so in 1997, my predecessor, Brett Flater, um, changed the name or the brand from American Helicopter Society Incorporated to AHS International. And the joke was always, with the tilt rotor, the V-22, there's civil tilt rotor, um, other things like Joint Strike Fighter. The joke was they thought about calling it, instead of American Helicopter Society, the International Rotorcraft Society. But we figured no one would want to have anything to do with the IRS, so they went
Yeah,
so they
that's
went with
fair.
AHS International. But the problem with using AHS International is then people would always say, well, what does the AHS stand for? I say, well, it's the American Helicopter Society. So they would still call us the Helicopter Society, which, we've always been, back to the 50s and 60s, looking at things that were not strictly helicopters. In fact, even when we were founded, the helicopter really built from the technology of the auto gyro, which is not vertical takeoff and landing. It's a short takeoff and landing. So
So then how did it go from maybe the IRS to the Rotorcraft Society to eventually Vertical Flight Society.
Yeah, so like I said, in 97 we changed it to AHS International, and then we started using a tagline, the Vertical Flight Society. And
Mm.
I going back in some archives, I found even in the 60s, the 60s were the time of the VSTOL revolution, which is vertical and or short takeoff and landing, and it's the Harrier jump jet. It was all kinds of jet VTOL, early tilt rotors. There's been this quest, this the second half of the 20th century to have an aircraft that could take off and land like a helicopter, but go much faster. And eventually that resulted, that was a Harrier, and then the replacement of the Joint Strike Fighter, which is where I actually started my obsession. Sorry, my interest and passion for vertical flight, as I was working on the in the Joint Strike Fighter office on the propulsion systems. Um, so, so the name, the Vertical Flight Society, has been associated with the society for over 50 years, and in 2017, with drones, with eVTOL, with advanced rotorcraft. I mean, you look at the military, the Future Vertical Lift is now it's the competition was underway. Now we've got the MV-75, the Bell Valor tilt rotor for the Army and potentially other operators. So the word helicopter was a limiter, and American was a limiter because from the very beginning we've even used the word international for 50 years now. So just it was interesting because we weren't really changing the name like as a visionary thing. This is what we want to do. It's just really more to change it to reflect what we now the Vertical Flight Society was already doing.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, so it sort of just evolved. It's so important. I just want to reiterate, and by the way, if you're watching this, put a comment and say how you know Mike Hirschberg and what he did for you in your career, because I just want to take a minute and tell you that you are the ultimate linchpin in my career in aerospace. I started in manufacturing as a stress engineer on 737s, 777s, A320, and I was just dead bored doing that. And so I'm, researching, I'm talking to Daryl Cummings, and I'm like, what are some cool things that I can do? That road led me to the Vertical Flight Society. And you were the first person that I met. You're the first person that I wanted to go to meet to learn more about this. So I was at my old job. They paid for me to go. I found you, sat with you at a table, and then that's when I met Ben Marcus, who introduced me to Martine Rothblatt. You also introduced me to Rashab. But every single person that is critical in what I'm doing right now at HYSKY came out of a relationship with you. And I know that's not just me, that's everybody that you've ever met. So, where do you think you get your inspiration to connect people, build people up, and just be so humble? Because I honestly can't say that I know one person that wouldn't credit a large part of their success and career to you.
Well, again, that's very kind. Bit of hyperbole, but thank you.
True.
Um, yeah, I mean, it's been really nice. So I left the Vertical Flight Society. My last day was July 31st, so just a couple of days ago, and I only announced a few days in advance. But yeah, I mean, it's been so heartwarming and touching and bittersweet to see all of the comments of people who just said I was so great. And I am a little humble, so it's a little tough for me to take it. But yeah, it was just really touching, and so many people. Some people, I had when I first started at AHS, when I first started as a director in 2011, we hired a summer intern from University of Maryland's close to the headquarters in Virginia, and we had a summer intern, engineering student, and we had him do like database stuff. Our membership database was not up to snuff. Anyway, so this student, it's been 15 years now or 14 years, so he even posted he worked for us for like 3 months doing crappy data work and then database work, and then he went to Boeing and Northrop and other companies. So he even said, that I, you know, helped him in some way along his path. So yeah, it's anyway. So I've noticed that I get really inspired by working with and talking to people like you, that you have energy, and I want to help you channel that energy into advancing aerospace and, particularly aviation and advanced air mobility, vertical flight. So I look for people like you that have a lot of energy and drive, and help you, I'll say, reach, fulfill your potential. And that's what kept me working late at night for 14 years.
I love that. Another example, you just made me remember something. When I did first meet you, we were in Atlanta, and I think I had met you the day before, and then it was the following day, and everybody's kind of getting ready to fly out, and we're sort of sitting, I don't know if we were at lunch or what, but everybody kind of had suitcases and stuff. And the night before at my hotel, there was this party for something unrelated to Vertical Flight Society, and I think I crashed it. They gave they gave you a ticket and they did a raffle, and I won like this giant like Google speaker, and it was heavy and I couldn't fit it in my suitcase. I didn't want to, check it or anything. So I'm telling you, I don't even know if you remember this, but we're like sitting at the table and there's other people around. I'm like, well, I won this huge speaker, but I don't know what to do with it. It was nice. And you were like, oh, I know exactly what to do. And so you get on your phone and you called over a student that was attending, I think that was local. And you were like, do you want a speaker? And he was like, what? Yeah. So then I met him. I gave him the speaker. Everybody was happy. But you just always, have an answer for problems that build great relationships. And I think you always are really good at knowing what people will get along, and how they should meet, connect, and that sort of thing. And a lot of amazing relationships have come out of that. So I've learned a lot from you. So I thank you for that.
Well, thanks. I mean, students are always, you need to encourage students. You need to inspire them to continue, like I said, to reach for their dreams. And so, so that was an Aviation Week conference. It was actually an MRO, maintenance, repair, and overhaul
Overall.
conference. But they had this. They wanted to get into advanced air mobility, or whatever they called it at the time. And so they had this 2-day workshop, which is why you were there, which is why I were there, because it's totally not, at the time, certainly not related to MRO. But Atlanta is the home for Georgia Tech, and they have one of the top uh, aerospace programs in the country, in the world. They're one of the top vertical lift research centers of excellence that's been funded by the Army, Navy, and NASA since the 1980s. So yeah, I mean, students are always a great resource to inspire. And if you have any extra energy or interest or speakers, you should provide them to students.
Yeah, I love that. There was one time at HYSKY Monthly we had some students present, and sometimes, in the comments, people can get like critical and kind of argue about different technologies. And I had to actually remind the audience, these are students, and the fact that they're remotely interested in renewable energy, hydrogen, electric aircraft, they need to be included and respected so much, because that's the hardest thing to do. Harder than technology, in my opinion, is just to get people interested. So welcome them in with open arms. That's something that I learned from you that you do so well.
Well, thank
Another
you.
thing, so let's kind of pivot to, how it led into hydrogen. So you also co-founded the H2 eVTOL Council. Let's talk a little bit about how that came to be. Where did it all start?
Well, at that very first transformative vertical flight workshop in 2014, there was this guy called Bud Scriba, and he kept talking about hydrogen, 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 hydrogen. I'm like, like, we don't know we can do this with batteries, right? So hydrogen, that's a whole nother quantum leap in capabilities. I'm like, well, maybe in 10 years. But so after, so anyway, Bud has been coming to all of our conferences, and he calls himself the godfather of hydrogen. He's very passionate. So after 6 years in 2020, um, the beginning of the pandemic, so everything kind of shut down on Friday the 13th of March 2020, and the Air Force had planned to have this meeting, this launch of something that was called Agility Prime. And so they ended up, because of the pandemic, they ended up making it virtual, and it was crazy successful because everyone was still sitting home, and it was the end of March, and everybody didn't have nobody knew what to do. Nobody had anything. No, not nobody, but a lot of people didn't have that much to do. So it was what, 3 days, the end of April, and I was invited to give a kickoff talk. This Colonel Nate Diller was the head of Agility Prime, and then the head of AFWorks, and so yeah. So I happened to mention hydrogen. I mentioned Bud Scriba. He's in the picture of the first meeting there over on the left side in his white shirt, and I'm speaking, I'm giving a presentation, and I start getting these WhatsApp or text messages from you saying, "Who's Bud Scriba? I need to meet." And I'm like, my phone's going off. I'm gonna try to give a talk. Anyway, part of the Agility Prime kickoff, they had companies, and yours was one of them with the previous name. And so we talked, and you had some really interesting ideas and motivation and concepts, and really explained kind of the benefits of hydrogen for vertical flight and for advanced air mobility. So basically, the end of April there, we're like, well, let's form a working group. Let's bring together people who are interested in hydrogen and see where it goes. Sort of the same thing with TVF in 2014. So we started meeting. We had Anubhav Datta, Professor Datta from the University of Maryland, Michael Diamond from Nexa Capital. You and Michael chaired it, and Anubhav was the technical expert. And yeah, so we did that. Let's see. So that was you did that we formally founded it as the H2 eVTOL Council in January of 2021, right? And
Yep.
you led it for I guess a year and a half or so, and that eventually ended up evolving into HYSKY, an educational hydrogen nonprofit.
I'm so glad that you took me on that journey. I remember that Bud Scriba was in that picture, but I had forgotten. And so I want to go back to that. Also, I need to get Bud on the podcast. Yes, Bud, when you watch this, come on here because that will
Yes,
be a fun one.
yeah,
But
that'll
what
that'll be
was,
a great opportunity to hear. He's got some, I'll say, radical ideas,
yeah,
but
and that's what we need.
yeah.
And so it's kind of interesting because I'm so curious. What was the attitude of Winbud back in, was it 2014 at the first TVF? What was the attitude towards what he was saying, and was he the only one talking about hydrogen? Because I'm wondering, did all of this kind of spring out of Bud?
Well, Bud was like I said, the godfather of a lot of this. I mean, hydrogen for aviation, it's been looked at for years. There have actually been aircraft that are flown on hydrogen, mainly hydrogen combustion. But I'm going to bring this up here, or I'm going to look at it up because
Mhm.
I want to tell you the name of the actual conference, the world's first conference on what became eVTOL or advanced air mobility. The full name of it was a joint AHS International AIAA Transformative Vertical Flight Concepts joint workshop on enabling new flight concepts through novel propulsion and energy architectures.
Oh,
I didn't
wow.
I didn't come up with that name.
And that's pre-chat GPT.
That's right. It's not quite a word salad. It actually means something, but
Mhm.
it wasn't saying it wasn't saying we're looking at battery electric vertical takeoff and landing aircraft. We were looking at, hey, let's bring everybody together who's talking about these crazy things and see where it takes us. We ended up just truncating it to transformative vertical flight (TVF) workshop um, through 2018, and in 2019 we went with the eVTOL symposium, which is now part of our larger TVF transformative vertical flight conference that we have
Mhm.
here. And when I say we, I mean VFS, even though I'm not part of the we anymore, but I was at the time.
Well, you're still a member.
I'm still a member, right?
I think so. You're still the part of the society because I'll
Oh, yeah,
say
for
we,
sure.
with respect to if I talk about AIAA, SAE, Vertical Flight Society, and High Sky Society, I'll say we, and then I always have to use it we as in this we, you
Yes,
know.
I have to explain sometimes what I mean by we.
Yeah. So did Bud present at that, and
He did not. He
he just
pulled a
talked
lot of
about
people
it?
aside, yeah, and kept trying to, hydrogen, 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 hydrogen.
What were people's response? Do you remember? Were they kind of like, okay, maybe, or was anybody else like, yeah, totally?
No, it was more of a, hydrogen is something out there. It's
Hmm.
it's it's maybe 10 years from now, and now it's 12 years later or 11 years later, right? So it is now.
So you also helped organize the first in-person hydrogen aviation conference, the H2 Aero event, and you also co-founded what I think co-founded what became the SAE AE5H Hydrogen Aviation Committee. I don't know how many of those facts I got wrong, but why did hydrogen click for you? And can you talk about how that conference began and where it is now?
Yeah, absolutely. So it began with the H2 eVTOL Council, but there's more. Hydrogen is so big. There are so many different aspects of it that need to be focused on. HYSKY is doing an incredible job with education, looking at the whole ecosystem, and so um, we brought in Jesse Schneider, who's been very active in hydrogen for was an expert in hydrogen for cars, and so we wanted to really focus more on the standards and the technology. So the first H2 Aero Symposium, so it was March of 2022. That was a few months after the Omicron variant and the masks had kind of finally come off. So it was really great to have this in-person event. There was so much pent-up demand for in-person interactions. It was
Right.
really great. And so, Jesse and VFS, we brought people together for this thing. We had over 100 in-person attendees, a couple dozen online attendees, and it was a day and a half of presentations, and then about a half day focused on, where do we go from here? And the outcome of that was a white paper that was looking at a demonstration of, and is a 40-page white paper looking at hydrogen refueling at airports. And then that ended up becoming an SAE committee, as you said. And first they were a task group, they were a subcommittee, they were recently promoted to committee. Again, it's SAE AE5H, Hydrogen Airport Committee. Um, but yeah, so I'm on the committee. I've been on the committee now since it was founded, 3 years ago. So a lot of things like working with you, Danielle. You find the people with energy and interest, and you help propel them. You provide the propulsion for them to reach their goals. So and they came out with one that's called an Aerospace Information Report, AIR. They're looking at the couplings. How do you do the standards for a coupling? They're looking at other things. They're going to have another aerospace information report eventually, but eventually these will lead to standards. But an AIR is sort of like, this is sort of the expertise of the world's expertise in how you do a hydrogen coupling. So again, finding people who are going to be passionate about something, and then pointing them in the right direction. And we've had the conference every year. VFS has had the conference every year. So for four of them now, and it's just really been exciting to see the community come together and look how to work on these challenges, how to solve challenges ahead of us.
It's so cool. You know, that picture I always talk about that picture from that first TBF. We'll definitely show it. But I love it because, yeah, you saw how much everybody in that picture went on to do. And it reminds me of the first picture that we took at Flying High in North Dakota, where now Martin Chan has went to Joby Aviation, who also is now doing hydrogen, and Bill Spillane is working with HYSKY, who was also part of Alakai. And so we see, and then you, and we're going to talk about that in a second. But you know, we're seeing how, like, just in a matter of a couple of years, that those few people that come together early on, that how much they can go on to do. So we're going to talk about you for a minute because I I look at Vertical Flight Society as family. That TVF event is probably my favorite event, especially the one in the Bay Area. It's just so much fun. I know I'm going to see all my friends. There's great networking, and that is just where I go to learn, see my friends and all of that sort of thing. And the thought of you not being at Vertical Flight Society anymore makes me want to cry. And so, but there is a silver lining because I was like, wait, there's no way that I'm letting this opportunity go. So we haven't announced this yet, but I invited you to be on the HYSKY board of directors. And what did you say and why?
Well, I said absolutely. Um, as discussed, I mean, I and VFS were, I mean, High Sky was basically a spinoff of VFS because we're focused, VFS is focused, primarily on vertical flight and sort of the adjacencies, but, we could not devote a significant amount of our attention to hydrogen. So we were so happy to support you and that you were willing to start the nonprofit. And so, I mean, you and I have worked hand in glove for the last, 4 years on a lot of things related to hydrogen. So it's a great honor, and I'm very pleased to be on the board, and I was pleased to know that it was a unanimous vote as well.
There was, in fact, Clint said, a few people said yes, 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 and Clint said yes, 100% yes. Yeah, I knew it would be a unanimous yes, but it was just nice to hear him add that. It was like, yeah, obvious, it's a no-brainer. I'm like, we want him. Like, I'm so honored to have you, so thank you.
And so, since I've left VFS now, I started my own consulting, I'll say company, legally as a company, but it's just really just me. So the name I came up with was Hirschberg Heuristics Advisors LLC. And heuristics, it's basically a methodology for problem solving, and uh, it's basically quick answers, right, or faster ways of coming to good answers. So anyway, I'm abbreviating it H2 Advisors because I don't want to say Hirschberg or heuristics too many times. So it's not hydrogen only. Depending on what kind of clients I get, there may be more or less hydrogen focus of H2 advisors. But obviously the unpaid work I'm doing for High Sky is an important part of my ability now to do these things beyond boards of directors for nonprofits like High Sky, and do other things that I think are really important to help propel forward.
Yeah, I love it. So yeah, the consultancy agency is called H2 Advisors, And I do love that name. I had to Google what does heuristic mean. I think I told you I didn't know what that word
I
meant.
think about
Um,
95% of people I have to explain what it is, which is okay.
Well, I think it sparks curiosity because
Yeah.
I don't like to not know what a word means. And then when I looked it up, I was like, oh, he was really intentional about this word that he picked. So yeah, to reiterate, H2 advisors can advise on hydrogen, but not just hydrogen. So I will tell you, if you're in the eVTOL space, CT-SOL space, CTOL space, I can't talk this morning, and or an electric flight in general, Mike is the what did we decide it was? You are the historian of the future of flight. What does that mean to you?
Well, they say what articles are the first draft, newspapers are the first draft of history, right? So, I suppose I wouldn't, it's very flattering uh, name, not something I would come up myself, but yeah, okay. Um, and I should also say, I'm interested in aviation in general. So it's strategic aviation insights, uh, and it's not just vertical flight, but it's also includes military. Any types of, doesn't have to be eVTOL, doesn't have to be VTOL, doesn't have to be electric, but just I have a long background before I came to VFS. I did a lot of work for advanced military technology, and so I still remember some of that.
Yep.
And then again, as I mentioned before, future vertical lift was something that, as passionate as I was for eVTOL, I was just as passionate about really giving birth, helping to make that a realization. And we were successful over you know 14 years. Basically 2011 was when we started. My predecessor was key in that as well. And here we now have an Army tilt rotor that's in there, and the current administration, the Trump administration, is accelerating at trying to get it out fielded in 2030 because it's a vitally important capability for the Army and hopefully other operators as well.
Yeah, that's a really cool program. I was fortunate enough to sit when I was on the advanced air mobility group at my previous job. Our team sat right next to the future vertical lift team. So there was tons of overlap actually. So it was actually really helpful. So what is your say in a perfect day of H2 advisors? Who are you advising? Not names, but like what is the company like? What are you advising on? What is like your sort of dream day or dream week or month or year look like?
So what I'm really hoping to do is continue the huge impact I had that VFS had over the last dozen years. And so I'm really looking for, like I could work for a Joby or Archer or Beta or somebody. And so, you can find my website, h2advisors.llc. So I'd be happy to advise for a prime. Um, but I think I'd be most excited to do things that can help the whole industry move forward. So whether that's, working for government clients or analysis companies or, nonprofits or whatever, I really want to help move the whole industry forward. And that's really been the underlying strength and underlying mission of the Vertical Flight Society is, the tagline is advancing vertical flight. It's what can we do as a nonprofit? What can we do to galvanize the industry, to focus on things to move forward? And that's really what I'm most interested in doing in the future.
I love that. And that really kind of describes your personality as well, because that's something that I learned from you, where like you know we all have like ideas like it should be this way. Why are we doing it that way? And you're the type of person that it should be this way. Let's do it this way, even if it's just the two of us. And I really was really, I mean, I would consider you a mentor. I don't think I've ever officially said that, but that's just something that I learned from you. It's like, well, don't have the idea without the action. Let's move it. And then people come along. And it's surprising how many people will come along when you just start something. So I definitely can see that for you. I think you're going to do really well. I think you will move the industry forward. I want to pivot a little bit. Can you talk about your upbringing? Tell me something about your mom and your dad, and what was your childhood like, and what were some of your inspirations and role models growing up, or who were some of your inspirations and role models?
So my parents split when I was, I guess when I was 10. So I lived with my mom, single mom, 4 kids. She had to she had to work nights. Um, but I would say I grew up in Woodbridge, which was at the time particularly a bedroom community for people who worked in Washington, D.C. So a lot of military, a lot of State Department. And so that sort of the DC area is people are I think are more focused in general on serving the public. What I took out of living in this area and the adults then where it was more for public service. But I do remember like the Air and Space Museum opened in 1976 and like it was full of
That's the
all these
year I was born.
airplanes. So I was 8 then. But when we moved here closer to DC, then like it was all these museums. We go to the art museum, we go to the White House, we could do this and other things. Like, no, we want to go to the Air and Space Museum. So we did. I mean, it was in theory a half hour away. Um, but yeah, we would go up and visit, and I remember Skylab also. So Skylab actually fell on my birthday in 1978, and
Wow.
there was this big hubbub. So I always felt this connection with Skylab and the and the space program. And I think as a lot of people at that time, it was, in the hiatus, Skylab and in the hiatus bit between Apollo and then the space shuttle. But it was like, okay, I remember some of you know, the space stuff back when I was little. And then the space shuttle was going to come, it was going to come. So it was always something looking forward to this next thing. So I decided to become an aerospace engineer. And actually, for some reason, when the Challenger explosion in January of 1986, I'd actually applied to the liberal arts college, University of Maryland, and then got in under early admission. I was able to switch to the engineering school. I didn't quite have the math and everything, all the background that I would have been more helpful for me if I had planned on going into engineering. But that was really, um, a galvanizing event of leading me into this area. And I had a professor, George Matthews, who was very inspirational to me. Um, and so I would consider him to be one of my mentors. And interestingly, University of Virginia is one of the only schools in America that has a bachelor's thesis. So I built rocket
Interesting.
motors. I packed black powder by hand, still have all 10 fingers, and tested rocket motors. I built a test stand, stuff like that. But that was sort of an action-oriented thing, right? It's not just studying, writing a paper about making rocket motors. I was actually doing it. Made a whole bunch of big rocket motors and solid rocket motors and tested them. Um, and later on, I met somebody else, Hal Andrews. He had retired from the Navy, from Naval Air Systems Command in 1986, and over his 35-year career there, had basically worked on every aircraft there for the Navy and Marines, including all the early VSTOL helicopter work. Anyway, so he was very kind. I met him. I knew him in the last 10 years of his life, and just was very kind and patient and inspirational for me. And he passed away in 2007. And so at the last annual forum for VFS, I did a 15-page paper on him and his life, and what everyone said was, like there was a short thing that's really, Hal loved airplanes, but he loved helping people more, and he seemed to help everyone. And so, whether by explicit design, I mean, that's really how I hope to be remembered. Also, is that yeah, I did some stuff for vertical flight, but I really helped people do what they wanted to do and move things forward.
I love that. Yeah, I often say like I my best skill is connecting people to other people, but
Yeah.
I happen to be obsessed with aviation and hydrogen. So yes, I could definitely see that. I have to ask you, what order do you fall? I'm obsessed with birth order. I'm one of
Number
six.
two, I'm
That's why we
two
get
of
along. I'm
I'm
number
two
two.
of I'm two of four, and then I have three half siblings as well.
I am two of six, and something about the middle. They can always find each other. That's great. Um, so yeah, I would love to read that paper. I wasn't aware of that. That's a really nice story about Hal.
Well, not only that, but at the annual forum in May, I presented the paper, uh, and it was video recorded, so it's now on the VFS YouTube channel under the Forum 81 playlist.
Okay, I'll
So
link it.
yeah, so you can share the link to that, and there are a lot of good presentations in there.
Awesome. Yeah, I think I didn't make it to that one because it was in Florida.
It was in Virginia Beach, but yeah,
Oh, Virginia Beach. Okay, yeah, that's I knew there was a reason I didn't go because I usually go to the one in Fort Worth.
right.
Yeah, I will definitely link that. Tell us about what are some of your hobbies that don't have to do? Do you have things that don't have to do with aerospace or aviation?
Mm, mm, Not really. I mean, I'm really into Tolkien, so like not just the Lord of the Rings, but all the stories that he wrote and the whole mythology. Um, I mean, it's a vast. The Lord of the Rings is a slice of it, but almost the tip of the iceberg. So anyway, I consider myself to be an amateur expert on Tolkien and just yeah and
Oh, I
how
love that. That's so interesting. Tell me more. Tell me what I didn't get from Lord of the Rings. And I've not read them. I've only seen the movies.
yeah I can't watch the movies because each as they progress through each one diverges farther and farther from the canon. So at the end, it didn't quite get to be the fan fiction one. That the Hobbit, they made the Hobbit into three movies. That was fan fiction. The Amazon series, the Rings of Power, that's all fan fiction. So it has no bearing on much of anything. But yeah, just very interesting. He Tolkien. I mean, he's religious, but he created his own, mythology and origins of the universe for his world, Middle Earth, and yeah, it's there, and they ended up publishing some of his stories as books posthumously. They're very readable. Um, the Children of Hurin
Hmm.
is probably the best written out one. Um, which I highly recommend. It's a tough it's a sad story.
Mm.
Children of Huron. But they published about 20 books, and it's just really interesting to see that something I've always been interested in is the evolution of creation, like sort of like TVF, where some people had this idea, and just going back to TVF, we thought it might take 10 years, taking longer. But one of the reasons why is the FAA was coming out with the Part 23 small airplane airworthiness criteria uh, regulations, and it gave the flexibility to include vertical flight in there. So we thought that the FAA, which which they had been saying they've been indicating that they would use Part 23, a vertical flight aircraft. They would use electric power. It was not a helicopter. It was an airplane that had special conditions for takeoff and landing. And in 2020, May of 2022, the FAA did a huge U-turn and said, no, it's like a powered lift aircraft. They had to use a special process, and I'll say it just really set the industry back a few years in that. And it's then the FAA had to create all this new regulations from whole cloth. Um, anyway, it was disheartening to see. Now at the same time, the company that I came up with this Hirschberg rule, the Hirschberg rule of thumb about 5 years ago, which was, it takes about $1 billion, 1,000 people, and 1 decade. So this 111 rule of thumb. Well, I was off by about 50%, at least in the amount of funding and the duration, right? So Joby was founded in 2009, and it's 2025, right? So it's 16 years. Um, so and I want to go back to some of the other stuff. So it is really important to encourage people to follow people and support advancing technology, but you also have to look at the engineering and the physics. Um, Based on some early design studies, and NASA had this also, where like 4 or 5 seats is kind of the maximum that you could operate under and still stay within the sound levels before it gets too annoying to people.
Hmm.
Um, there's also predictions that batteries would advance more rapidly. Again, the regulations also more rapidly. So to some degree, it's taken a lot more time and money and effort to kind of get to where the industry is now, where there are, Joby, for instance, has several aircraft that are being flight tested. Beta has several for conventional takeoff and landing, as well as their vertical flight aircraft. Archer's, developing several to start flight testing. Um, but when I started saying in the 2018 timeframe was, there's all these things. We need regulations, we need infrastructure, we need more, workforce, we need improvements in technology. And batteries kind of suck. Um, they have enough power for 4 or 5 seats, pilot plus 4 seats, and still be able to stay small and still stay within that electric power. But that's why I was so excited about hydrogen, because it's got something like what is it, 100 times more energy, sorry, specific energy. So that's energy per unit weight compared to it's got 100 times more, 80 times more than batteries, and 3 or 3.5 times more than kerosene. Um, Now it's a little better as far as the energy density, which is volume. So it's batteries take up huge amounts of space. Hydrogen, either compressed or liquid, still take up huge amounts of space. It's like I think a quarter as dense as kerosene. So we think that there's a huge payoff for vertical flight. We think it's a game changer for vertical flight, but there's so many challenges with hydrogen in so many ways across the entire ecosystem, which is why we're so happy that HYSKY is trying to address all these different areas.
Yeah, well, thank you for bringing up that chart. And to that point, also shout out to you and Vertical Flight Society and the who was the student that did the chart?
Was mineral. Uh, he was a PhD student at the time, now a PhD from University of Maryland. Again, one of Anubhav Datta's students, and he wasn't actually doing research on hydrogen, but it was of something of interest. And I think for a lot of aerospace engineers, it's something that is very interesting. And it is different from what's out there before, or what's out there today. As far as kerosene, it's got some huge benefits from if you use it for a hydrogen fuel cell, you're generating electricity, and then instead of having shafts go to a bunch of propellers, you can have power by wire and power all these distributed electric propulsors. So it's very attractive both from for eVTOL and eCTOL aircraft, as well as for helicopters. So it's a way you can have clean, zero emissions. And some helicopters still use piston engines, so that's producing avgas, it has lead in it.
Mhm.
So it's not only clean from a carbon perspective, but also getting lead out of the atmosphere, which is also very important.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. And kind of to come back to the chart, the reason why I got excited when you brought up the chart just now, as a fellow aerospace engineer, and I was just telling you this, I know in my gut the difference between specific energy and energy density, but I doubt myself. And I have to look at the chart every time I'm going to speak on it. And I remember like it was yesterday, we were on a meeting, like on a Zoom call, you, me, Anna Bob, and I think Mike Diamond, and maybe John Piasecki. I can't remember who all was there, but we were having this conversation about hydrogen versus jet fuel. And then we couldn't, and we had a chart on that. And then we had a chart on hydrogen and batteries, but we didn't have anything that had all three of them on the same chart. And we were like, that really needs to exist. And so Manal put that together and I use it almost every day. I'm going to put a link to it in the description below or wherever you're looking at this, you'll find a link. But I was telling you, Mike, we need to turn it into a poster and like how people hang up the periodic table. And I think anybody that is in the eVTOL space or just in aerospace propulsion energy in general should have this chart. Even in automotive, it would be valuable. We need to make it into a poster because I reference it every day. So that was a humongous contribution from Vertical Flight Society. I think will be
Well,
one for the history books.
so he was a student of Professor Dada at University of Maryland, but that's what VFS, that's what nonprofits do. They bring experts and novices and people from all perspectives. A diversity of viewpoints and expertise is really key to advancing anything. So anyway, it's University of Maryland donated it to VFS, and it's available for anybody to use and make a big poster of it or whatever.
Very cool. And kind of going back to sort of these people that are really accelerators of the technology in the industry. Dr. Anubhav Datta, also another one of those individuals in University of Maryland. And I don't think that I've had one podcast that doesn't mention you on above Martine, Mikhail, Bud. We hear these same names, they come up, and I just love how everybody sort of goes out there and pollinates, and it really does move things forward.
Yeah, it's it takes a village. It takes a village. I think for hydrogen, it's going to take villages around the world to connect. You know, there's also hydrogen combustion for airliners, and that there may be a huge benefit from that as well. It's not as green as hydrogen fuel cells because you actually do have the combustion, so you have NOx output, which is undesirable. But still, there's many other benefits. It's better than kerosene or SAF. If and honestly, the H2 Aero Symposium is not vertical flight focused. It's not only fuel cell focused either. It's hydrogen, big hydrogen. We want to know what Airbus and Boeing what their future plans are. We want to know what NASA's doing, um, because you can't just have hydrogen at one airport.
Right.
Airplanes generally take off and land at different airports. So you need to have a network. You need to have you want to have green production of hydrogen. You need to have green transportation of hydrogen, green storage, all these factors that HYSKY is tackling. You want to have everything that it's not increasing the overall carbon output or pollution for the atmosphere.
Yeah, that's such a key point. And for those folks that maybe are not engineers or not well versed in advanced air mobility or electric aviation, really the key takeaway is hydrogen allows you to go further. And what made me interested in that was, if you remember from the previous company, my co-founder Dr. Rachel Locks, we were looking at how we could save lives with aviation, and we wanted to do it with clean aviation. And hydrogen really allows you to go further than batteries. What would Mike? What would you say to some of the naysayers about hydrogen, or what are some of the things that you hear? People saying hydrogen won't work. What do you say to that?
Well, it won't work with that kind of attitude. You
Ooh,
know,
I love that.
I mean, I used to say this about eVTOL as well. There are 1,000 reasons why it won't work, but we believe that there's more solutions than there are problems, that we need to find the path where hydrogen will work. And we think that there is there, but there's so many challenges to overcome. Groups like the H2 Aero, SAE, HYSKY, working on these different aspects, as well as the companies, right? So Zero Avia, HYSKY, all these different companies that are working on, demonstrating hydrogen fuel cell aircraft, and working with the regulators here in the U.S. and the UK and EASA, right, to build the framework. At our last H2 Aero Symposium, we had the chief scientist for propulsion at the FAA saying, answer. Somebody says, how do you say that, what do you say to people that the FAA will never certify hydrogen aircraft? And he's like, no, that's not correct. The FAA will never certify an unsafe aircraft.
Yeah,
That's it, right? So if it's
yeah.
safe, it can be certified. Now, it's a lot of work. People hear hydrogen, and for unknown reasons, over almost 100 years later, right? There's the Hindenburg syndrome. People still have that burning airship in their mind when they think about hydrogen and aviation. Meanwhile, there's tens of thousands of forklifts around the country and around the world that run on hydrogen in
And
warehouses.
cars.
There's all these, tens of thousands of cars that are around the world that are running on
Hmm.
hydrogen, right? It can be safe in some ways. It's safer than fuel, than gasoline. In some other ways that needs to be treated with caution. If somebody had explained, well, if somebody was trying, if we've all drove around on electric cars today, and battery electric cars also have unique pros and cons, right? If somebody said, yeah, we're going to take this stuff called gasoline, it's highly explosive, but we're going to put it under your seat, or put it in the back of your car where you carry your babies in the back, like, people would, this is crazy. No one would ever do that. Hydrogen did not cause the Hindenburg to blow up, right? So there's a book, and it actually talks about that. One of the chapters is the Hindenburg syndrome, or don't coat your airship in rocket fuel. The
Hmm.
the canvas, they had coated it with aluminum. Aluminum is what they use in the space shuttle engines. Like, it's highly flammable. So again, hydrogen has safety. There's safety things. There's safety precautions. Um, NASA's been using hydrogen for space launches for 80 years, whatever the number is. And it has never caused hydrogen. There's never been a hydrogen leak that's caused an accident, right? So you just need to know how to handle it, what the precautions are.
Exactly. I love what you said, not with that attitude. Reminds me of something that my dad used to say, and I say it to my daughter and my niece to this day is, you have two people in a room and one person says they can and the other person says they can't. Who's right? And my dad would always, both of them. And yeah, so you're absolutely right. Everything's impossible until it isn't.
Yeah, that's right.
Everything's impossible till it isn't.
And
Um,
you look at lots of stuff. Like people, and I see on LinkedIn, people spend a lot of time discrediting eVTOL or supersonic flight or hydrogen, and there are always absolutes. Oh, it'll never work, and oh, well, what about this issue? It's like, well, yeah, that's an important issue. We got to figure out how to overcome that. And in the end, when you have everything at the end, well, maybe it won't be competitive in the marketplace, you know? Maybe, but like even eVTOL, right? So there's certain reasons why you want to fly battery electric or hydrogen electric, and some of
right.
those are, well, they can be much quieter. You know, so there's a noise pollution, there's a air pollution. Um, you know, electric motors are generally much less maintenance, repair, and overhaul than combustion. So, you know, the operating expenses are expected to be much lower. So there, you know, Igor Sikorsky, you know, said, "Oh, when will the helicopter?" You know, people would ask him, "When will the helicopter be able to fly faster and farther than an airplane?" And the response was never. But if you need to rescue somebody, you know, in an airplane, they can fly around. Somebody needs to be rescued and drop flowers on them, or a vertical flight aircraft can go in there and then rescue that person. So there are certain missions where vertical flight is necessary. Electric power, battery electric, you know, solar, so you know, however you charge it with, or hydrogen fuel cell electric, where they have compelling use cases, and certainly as you know, fossil fuels become less abundant in the world as they're used up, as there's more pollution, there's certainly compelling reasons to look at alternative energy sources.
Yeah, I mean, you nailed it. Just a I was 2 or 3 days ago. I was driving. You've met Hayla, my niece Hayla. We're driving, and the road is blocked off, and there are tons of ambulances and police cars. And I'm like, oh boy, something bad happened. So we're kind of like rerouted. And then as we start going through the neighborhood, a helicopter comes over, and I said, I guarantee they're going to that wreck. And she was like, really? And I was like, yeah. In fact, so we pulled over like in the parking lot where we got pretty close because I wanted her to see, because I'm always preaching this stuff, but this is why. They did end up, it was a life flight. They did go in and get somebody, and they went into this little area where they quickly landed, loaded the person up, and then they were out of there. And I said, now imagine if it couldn't do vertical takeoff and landing. And I actually recorded it as well. And thankfully, I don't know what happened. We haven't found the update on it. But anyway, she was able to see. So imagine if that was a regular aircraft, even a small one, they would have needed some kind of runway. And there isn't that because everything's all crowded and there's cars everywhere. So she was finally like, got it, like, oh. And I was like, yes, like once you see, like, vertical flight saves lives. It can save lives, so it's very critical. And then if we can do that without emissions, then that's really when it really becomes kind of a necessity and a very beautiful technology. So for people that are naysayers, well, don't be mad at people for trying. Why are you so mad about it? Like they're trying to do a good thing.
It is strange. I would say LinkedIn is getting a little bit more like Facebook, where people either get angry or they're trying to prove something or disprove something, and it can get unfortunately it gets a bit unpolite
Hmm.
sometimes, and everyone's always absolutes. Oh, this will never work. It's like, well, you know, we think it will.
Yeah. And if it doesn't, fine, we tried. And I think those little never workers are I think they're like projecting that they didn't follow their dreams and don't like to see people chasing after theirs. Okay, last thing, if you could go time travel to your 18-year-old self, what advice do you give?
Uh, I would say, yeah, I would say believe in yourself. I was a painful introvert in high school and college, and it was really through professional societies. I was active in AIAA, and you know, I think it was your first podcast you ever did in 2000 or 2001 for a Vertical Flight Society, and I said, you know, I didn't want to be the president of the my college student chapter. I want to be the vice president, and they almost elected me as president. I'm like, no. Uh, but then it was time for the AIAA Student Regional Council, Mid Atlantic Student Council, to meet at UVA, University of Virginia, and so my mentor, Professor Matthews, said, "So we need somebody to organize it. Who's going to do that? Which of you guys can do that?" And I heard myself say, "I'll do it. I'll do it." I'm not sure why. Maybe it's divine intervention. But having that experience then of organizing a conference, reaching out, and then after graduation, I was like, oh, I had AIAA before, here now as a professional, as a working for a consultancy. I didn't have that, so I actually started my own. I shouldn't say my own. I started the AIAA Arlington chapter, which I led for about 10 years and then handed off. But we had speakers, brown bag speakers, to come and talk and network and things like that. So, that activity, those sorts of things. When I first heard that my predecessor, Red Flater, was going to retire, and they were interested in encouraging me to apply for the position, I just laughed. I thought it was the funniest thing. It's like, oh, I could never do that. So I really didn't believe in myself. And after much thought and encouragement and discussion, and like, I don't know why, a lot of people believed in me, and I wasn't sure why. They believed in me more than I did myself. So I think in that sense, if I could go back and make myself believe in myself, I maybe I could have done even more. I don't know.
Mm.
I'm very satisfied with the path that I ended up in. And as that 18-year-old kid, or even a recent graduate, I never could have seen this strange route that led me to where I am today. But it's certainly been very gratifying for the impact that I have had on aviation over the last 14 some years. So, and so
That's
maybe that's the key for the viewers here. Like, believe in yourself, but like, don't blindly believe in yourself. Don't be overconfident. Make sure you listen to others and get inputs from a diverse spectrum of people, and then you have to synthesize that into, okay, these 10 people said 10 different things. What really resonates with me that I can really grab onto and follow?
Yeah, that was what beautifully said. Leadership takes courage, more courage than knowledge, but you do need some knowledge. And courage is not the absence of fear. It's just doing the thing when you're afraid. But you're never going to know it all to be confident. How does the saying go? Youth is wasted on the young.
Something like that, yeah. And I'll
Yeah.
just say, just going back to the name change, I thought it was the right thing to do, but I'm like, well, I'm the sixth executive director in this, 70 plus years that it's been around now, more than 80. I don't want to screw it up. And, people join the American Helicopter Society, or AHS, for a reason. And if we change the name, is that going to alienate people that we change the name, right? And again, it was just the right thing to do. And our board chair, who was the head of Boeing Rotorcraft at the time, Boeing Vertical Lift, really supported it and really brought it to a head. We did a bunch of different surveys. We did all kinds of stuff to get people's views. And it was in kind of that 50% range where, like, no, few people hated it, some people loved it, but it was in that discretionary area. There wasn't, the members weren't clamoring for it, but nobody said, I'm going to quit if you change the name. So it was then became an executive decision, and the board unanimously approved the change.
Very cool. Well, Mike, thank you so much for your time. This has been an amazing chat as always, and I'm so excited that you're officially part of the High Sky Society team. More to come. But yeah, thank you so much for being my guest today.
My pleasure, my pleasure.